Hello friends, welcome to a new art tutorial on my channel. Today we will learn to paint this yummy Blackberry Mojito using different techniques to create effects using watercolors. Today I will be using watercolors, 25% cotton, hot press paper and round brushes. This is the beautiful breeze palette from Thoovi Arts and these are the color swatches from the span set. Let's begin. I start by wetting the right side glass as I will be creating a blurred effect on this glass. Hence, the whole glass will be painted with wet on wet technique. I am using magenta color from the Breeze palette. I have mixed a small amount of indigo for the darker tone at the base of the glass. I will then take Payne's grey in a diluted form to fill the rest of the glass. Mind the shape of the glass since this is wet on wet. The blackberry is then painted using Payne's grey and small amount of indigo. Sprinkle plain water to get the bubbly effect of the drink. Now we come to the fun part. Take any square object and place it inside the tissue paper as shown and stamp it on the painted area. Since the paper is 25% cotton and hot pressed, the paint would still be on the surface and easy to lift. Use the yellow-green shade to paint the leaves. Now let's continue by wetting this blackberry. Since I want it to be blurred, I am using wet on wet method for this as well. I have used Payne's grey to paint these blackberries and slightly lifting the colors to show the different seeds in the blackberry. I am using Payne's grey to define the shape of the glass and the bottom part of this glass. Make sure to use a diluted version for this. Once again sprinkling plain water to show the bubbly effect as it was not shown properly. I am using a diluted version of magenta to show that these ice cubes are slightly translucent and a frosty effect on the glass. I am also using Payne's grey to create shadows between the ice cubes. Here is another method to create the ice cubes. I am just lifting the paint using the brush. Let's start working on the other glass. I'll start by painting the leaves using the yellow-green color. You can use any darker shade of green. Here I'm using the tea green to create the darker versions and the veins on the leaves. I'm taking some Payne's grey and adding it to this blackberry. I'll be using the lifting technique to create the shapes on this. Once again repeating the process for this glass, but this time we are going to do wet on dry. We won't be using any water previously. Now just for the blending, since we want a very smooth blending, I'm using water here. For the base I've used a mixture of indigo and Payne's grey and over it I'm going with magenta. I'm using plain water to blur the edges and to make it look more juicy and frosty. We'll continue painting the rest of the liquid or the juice using a diluted form of Payne's grey like we did for the previous glass. Sprinkle plain water for the bubbly effect. I'm adding tiny berries here using Payne's grey. I'm once again using this lifting method using the square object and the tissue. If in case your tissue is soaked with paint, you can change the location of the object and continue dabbing. Adding some diluted color inside the ice cubes to show its translucent properties. I'm using Payne's grey to create the shape of this glass. I'm painting the lower side of this blackberry wet on wet as I want to show that it is soaked in the liquid and we are seeing it through the glass. Make sure to blur the edges of this one. Some shadow to the ice cubes using Payne's grey. Make sure the painting is dry before moving on to this step. I'm using Payne's grey to create the structure of the glass or the rim and the outer side of the glass. Make sure it is a diluted version. My painting seems to have a very thick rim. I'll be trying to dilute it further. Moving on, I'll be painting this table using wet on wet technique once again. But I'm using Indian yellow for the base. Now once this is semi-dry, I'll be using a mixture of magenta and yellow orange to create the texture on this and the shadow of the glasses. Coming to the last part, I'll be using once again wet on wet technique for the background as well to get a better finishing. I've wet the whole paper and applied Payne's grey to all of the background. The blueberry that is at the frontmost part needs to be in high definition. So I'm painting this red on dry. Wet on wet or lifting is not an option for this one. Use a diluted form of Payne's grey to paint the background and then paint around each of the shape so that we get the high definition form of the blackberry. I'm sprinkling plain water on the background and lifting this with a tissue to create a frosty atmosphere. And we are done. Hope you have enjoyed painting this. Do share with me so that I can share it on social media. Thank you.